Hi everyone. I'm looking forward to our synchronous class on Thursday, but I just wanted to give you a little video introducing some what I have in mind with this class. Um, and I might continue doing this if you're interested in it. I'm not sure if how useful you think these asynchronous video lectures are. But I always feel like I leave stuff out from class that I would want to touch upon, and so I kind of have a tendency to want to make them and just make them available for you. Um, so first thing I might say about this class is that it's awfully eclectic. Um, I mean, I'm quoting the term that Connor used, describing it to me, and he's totally right. And um, that runs the risk of being unfocused. And I want to address that concern if you have that concern, and tell you that from at my perspective, at least for what that's worth, um, it is quite focused, and I'll tell you what the focus is. Um, I have always been very, I mean, my field is romantic literature, and I think I have a maybe a typical romantic imbalance in that I maybe overthink things, but I also am sort of emotionally unbalanced. So I uh, am very curious about the force of emotion, but on our understanding of things and on our behavior, and how literature kind of mediates those two. And I just find uh, literature it's like um, it's paradoxical in that it relies on these inexplicable emotional appeals, imaginary appeals. It has to compel us in ways that we don't really understand. If we did understand them, then literature wouldn't properly work the way it does. If it totally spelled out why you should be interested in it, part of the enjoyment of literature, like art in general, is the communication of the mystery. Why it's even interesting that we're passing that along, that engagement and investment, curiosity um, in things we can't entirely explain. And that's like love. That's like romantic relationships, social relationships, the way in which the species perpetuates itself. Um, so, um, to be clear, what I mean is that love, our conception of love, um, requires a similar experience of mystery. Um, and I'm not, that is not just a romantic turn of phrase. If I were to ask you um, why you are friends with the people you're friends with, or in love with the people you're in love with, family members or partners, um, what could you explain why? Um, I mean, I think I could. The first time someone asked me that question, I thought my response was yes, I can. I can explain. I have a lot of good reasons why. Um, what are the qualities that makes them lovable to you? Um, I think you can give a lot of um, practical, concrete, rational evidence for your relationships, but they're never going to be sufficient to explain your investment in your relationships for the very rational, logical reason that somebody else could always come along and embody those exact same qualities that you name more, or add extra ones that you like as well. And um, but your allegiance wouldn't change. So that's to say there's a disconnect between our social investments and erotic romantic investments, and the way in which we understand, make sense, explain um, our what things are and what they're for in the world. Like a fundamental irrationality is um, necessary, and it's not that mysterious. If you were in a relationship that was, you found out that it was kind of like the other person was doing it only for practical reasons, or there's something, if there's too much overlap between your romantic choices and your kind of material self-interest, that it puts your romantic choices in doubt, and vice versa. It adds to the romance that it goes against your material self-interest. Um, so I just think that's pretty interesting that, especially in the modern world that's so devoted to rationality and um, productivity, practicality, that we're also so into love and glamorize it and um, obsess about it and, um, popular art and culture. In a culture like ours, um, we're receiving these contradictory messages all the time. Be successful, be productive, be rational, and be, irrationally in love. All for the sake of the irrational, ecstasy um, of love. Uh, and so hence I think the importance of horror, um, are I think that's something that comes out of romantic art, is a recognition of the role of a disturbing, unsettling um, aspect of love, um, and that, which is to say, emphasizing the unsettling aspect of love is romantic in the sense that it's standing up for love against the sort of lie of uh, you know Protestant work ethic, rationalistic, productive, consumeristic society. It's kind of saying you can have it all and it all makes sense. You can be happy and blissful and successful and productive. Um, not acknowledging that there's a disconnect there, that actually um, they're competing priorities. Um, just wanted to mention this line. I think one of my favorite lines, romantic literature. Um, Even the dearest that I love the best are strange, nay, rather stranger than the rest. Um, that's part of what I'm curious about. That, like, um, the uh, that intimacy and love. If you think about family relationships, um, they they're the people you know the best. They're the ones you're closest to, but they're also usually the most difficult and um, unpredictable and challenging. And that's the way I think relationships often are. You meet somebody and you get along, and you think, oh, I don't know, you like have these initial conversations, and think, you're so impressed by how this feeling of being in sync with another person, um, and then years later you're living together, and you wake up next to him and you're like, who is this stranger? Like, um, so that's to say that love isn't linear. Love and strangeness, that these opposites um, grow together. Um, Love, often involves pain, pleasure, and pain, um, which is to say that it's sublime, and that in terms of romanticism, um, it's a value um, that is at the limit. Sublime means kind of limit, subliminal. It's like kind of beyond the limit of definition. Definition means holding things within defined uh, it, limits. Whereas the sublime means an involvement with something that lacks definition. That's what makes it different from beauty. Beauty, we understand basically why it's beautiful. We look at a rose, it has this symmetry. We hear beautiful music, it has harmony that we can understand. It has complementary tonality. What the pleasure of beauty is built into is implicit in the structure. Um, Sublimity is an experience that doesn't that scrambles our understanding, mixing contradictory. It's something that should be frightening, um, but it's also moving, um, uh, and that it's arguably a deeper kind of communication because of that um, inexplicability or that mystery. Um, Sort of like, if you need it explained to you, then you don't really get it. If you have to ask, you'll never know. It's like um, that's the value of uniqueness, the distinction of the sublime in art is that it's a kind of social consensus, trust about um, things that we can't like document or account for in these impersonal, rational ways. So that's what arguably makes it really crucial for human relationships. It's a way of establishing trust, um, but without legally binding you to it in this way. It's a personal sense of trust, that you can't rely on impersonal collateral to as a kind of like alibi. Um, so it's a good means of communicating love, or forging and but social bonds, but also testing them. Um, and the sublime is not just about social bonds or imagination. There have been a lot of studies that explore its relationship to intelligence. You know, um, it exercises a kind of experimental intelligence, um, thinking about infinity. What defies definition. That infinite is, it's the opposite of defined, delimited. The sublime, the infinite. Especially now in our world where we are conscious of the role of incomprehensible measures of time and space, um, incomprehensible sort of numbers, statistics. Um, we're dealing with this virus now, the climate change. Um, they force us to deal with numbers, quantities that are hard to grapple with in a simple linear way. In the terms of our rational, um, uh, thinking of direct causation, we're confronting realities now in the modern world that aren't reducible to direct causation, that have these that are effects of much more complex, um, chaotic systems. And the sublimest way of communicating about that. Sublime art is a way of uh, socially communicating, representing things that we can't understand, and these the rather blunt and crude terms of our linear rational understanding, realizing like biology, evolution, viral communication isn't linear. But there's also empirical scientific evidence, developmental psychology, and that also has to do with our brains. The fact that we have such long childhoods, we need this very long experimental period of bonding with our parents and experimentally exploring the world before we're able to exist independently, um, as organisms. We need that period for our brains to develop, and that's so it's built into us a devotion, irrational devotion, like it can. It's absurd to suggest that a parent's devotion to their child is practical. That they're going to do it for self-interested reasons. Um, uh, the child is going to protect them later on, or like I was saying about rational trying to rationalize your choices in romance, to say you'd be more devoted to a child that was had more potential than a child that had less potential, that your devotion to a child had anything to do with their potential success or strength or intelligence as an adult. We have an idea of what it means to be a parent, what it means to be, in a family, or that level of devotion just excludes. It cannot accommodate that kind of calculation. So again, it's really it's not a romantic thing to say that we rely on a kind of sublime, um, or a kind of sublime investment in the sublime, the this value that we can't understand, that scrambles our normal understanding. Implicates love and horror, love and strangeness. The ones we love the most are also kind of the most um, terrifying. And isn't that what family's about on some level? Is being that invested in other people, and um, the vulnerability that comes with that. Um, that's deeply built into us as a species, and so that's what this class is about, is sort of exploring how the various ways in which that uh, is represented and communicated. Let's see here. Um, So I'm gonna, start out with giving you a little bit of a overview of some key romantic texts, especially Frankenstein's. It's about this tension. It's a master text dealing with the tension that I've been talking about between rationality, engineering love, engineering family. That's what Frankenstein is about. Um, and its treatment of that question is masterful, multifaceted, um, and has a lot to do with feminism that I'm going to explore in these romantic poems, or I'm inviting you to explore in these romantic poems and recent essays by Rebecca Solnit. So looking forward to discuss those.